Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the inevitable food price increases with a particular focus on not just Brexit, but what our options are post-Brexit. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So when it comes to the main cause of our shortages in Britain, which are not replicated around Europe, there is now widespread agreement. Even the Brexit press are agreeing the cause is a lack of workers in key parts of our supply chain. I'll focus on food, as I have been doing recently, because you know what? It's the most important right now. People also talk about medicines, extremely important as well. But at the end of the day, everyone needs food. Medicines is therefore secondary. And also, more people will notice, because not everyone needs medicines at the same time. Everyone needs food at the same time. So more people notice the food. Now, where people have their own agendas to push, I don't mean that in a critical way, is in explaining the cause of shortages. So, for example, you could take lorry drivers as an example. So haulage companies, when you ask them what the problem is, 100% of the time say the problem is a lack of access to lorry drivers from the EU that Brexit brought this year. That's why we've got these shortages. Lorry drivers themselves will say the problem actually you'll find is crap pay and crap working conditions. If you paid better, you get more drivers. Both are right, but neither alone holds the key to the solution. For example, if you increase the pay of lorry drivers, which we have been doing, more so than has already taken place even, because we still have the shortages, you still don't actually have enough lorry drivers. It's not enough in the country. And I want to talk in a separate video about the impact of large companies paying more and just moving workers from one part of the supply chain to another without actually dealing with it on the national scale. But consider this line of thinking. So, because I completely agree, the workload of lorry drivers and the pay as two separate things. It's not even that if you massively increase the pay, it'd be all right. What they have to do is ridiculous. Shouldn't be allowed in this country. And I know why. It's because we don't have enough lorry drivers. But absolutely ridiculous. The same applies with workers we're short of throughout the supply chain. They aren't paid enough. Sometimes the conditions aren't too bad, but they're not paid enough. So is the solution to pay them more? Well, you've got these huge shortages in the industry. If the solution was to pay them more, that would be the solution applied. Because here's the thing. So if people aren't paid enough, of course they should be paid more. Labour's policy, for example, is for a £10 minimum wage right now. It's only £8.91 at the moment. So that would be a 12% pay increase for the lowest paid workers. So let's consider the supply of food. Right now we've got fruit and veg rotting in the fields. The latest I was hearing about was blueberries rotting on their bushes. Farmers can't get the staff to tend the crops or harvest them. They are looking towards solutions long term that include more automation, so the need for fewer workers. Because they know they can't get the workers. They know the workers aren't there. But right now, these crops are rotting from a lack of workers. Will increasing their pay by 12% help? I don't know. The pay has been going up. In quite a lot of sectors, it has been going up by in excess of 10% at least. But what I do know is farmers aren't losing out on profit out of spite. They're not letting their crops rot in the field because they go, I'm not paying them anymore. No. Even if it would get me more, that's ridiculous. They would, of course, be paying whatever level they think they need to get them in order to run their business. It's not working. So logically, what that means is the amount of people that need paying to do this work, or the amount that needs to be paid to the people to do this work, must be an amount above what farmers can currently afford. In order to attract enough workers, it must be more than they can currently afford. So how do you deal with that? Well, the farmer has to put up their prices. That's how it works, isn't it? Now, we'll ignore the control that supermarkets have in this area for now and assume that the entire farming industry would just have to insist that the prices have got to go up, because that's the only way to get these crops out of the field. So the cost of food goes up to compensate for the extra wages needed to attract workers to actually pick the crops or slaughter the livestock, because that's where we have another shortage, just not as widely publicised. So then that food needs to go from the producer to the processor. Well, there are shortages there as well. Again, those businesses will have to pass on the cost of the higher wages because, again, we're going on a policy here of going, look, just raise the wages to whatever is needed to get rid of these shortages. Pull people in from other industries where we don't need as many, like, I don't know. We don't need as many Conservative MPs, maybe we can pay them enough to get a Conservative MP in the fields. Who knows? Or the factories. But we pay them whatever's needed to get workers into these key positions, and as a result, we just have to charge more for the food. So the food increases again. So it's already increased because of the extra cost of production. Now it's increased because of the extra cost of processing. Then we need to store the food somewhere. We've got shortages of staff in storage, so we need to increase their wages. So the price of food goes up again to compensate for the higher costs of storage. Then we need to transport it. Wages for lorry drivers need to go up, so the price increases yet again. In every link of the supply chain, we have shortages of workers. Those shortages were brought to us by Brexit because we had a lot of people from the EU doing that work that are not now doing it. You can argue that we felt those shortages more severely because our pay and labour laws weren't strong enough, and I won't disagree. But the fact of the matter remains that if you pay all these people what they need in order to get rid of those shortages, to compensate for Brexit, and that's assuming the workers even exist in the numbers needed, that there is any amount that would get them in, which is debatable to say the least, then you need to put up the price of the food considerably. Okay, you say, that's fine. The price of food has been kept artificially low anyway because of all these issues. Okay. But then there's the knock-on effects that we need to consider. So what about people on low income, say, who don't work in the supply chain? Their income hasn't gone up, but the cost of food has rocketed. Also consider what this means. So you're at the meat counter. There's some British and Danish bacon. Well, because we've now paid workers in our supply chain at every level what they deserve and need to do those jobs, that cost of the British bacon is way higher than the Danish bacon. The Danish bacon is also more expensive because the cost of transport goes up with lorry drivers paying no matter where it comes from. We need lorry drivers to deliver that as well. But we haven't had to increase the cost of producing the Danish bacon. So the price of that remains much lower than the British bacon. So people buy the Danish bacon. The cost of British cue a load of comments from Danes saying it's also better quality. I'm not getting into that. But the cost of British produce, meat and veg, has priced itself out the market. We're buying Danish bacon, Dutch fruit, Irish beef, and we've priced ourselves out the market. So what happens is people buy more EU produce. And so we increase our reliance on EU imports. Some people will buy it because they just can't afford the British food now, it's too expensive. Some will just choose it because it's cheaper, it's just economy. And so British food producers then go under because people aren't buying enough of their goods. If they're not buying enough, the only way to cope is to increase the cost further. But that just worsens the problem. And I'm not pointing this chain of events out as part of some argument about whether the solution is to pay higher wages or not. We are paying higher wages because that's market forces at work right now. We are desperately short of workers. The government are not allowing visas in many of these shortage areas. And even when they are, there's too much paperwork for people from the EU to be bothered. They can work in other countries in the EU without all that horrendous paperwork. In actual fact, if we're talking about visas, we're talking about getting people from much further overseas than Europe. But businesses have no option but to scour domestic workforce. There is nowhere else to get them from. So they scour a domestic workforce that simply isn't there. So all that's really happening is they're mostly taking workers from somewhere else. They're attracting workers who already work in the industry. They're just taking them from one business to another, which works for them and their customers, but it still keeps the overall level of shortages, in the country the same. So the country still has the same shortages. We've just moved where they are. But this means that food prices are increasing because we haven't really increased the workforce. We've just increased what we've paid them. So the food price still increases and are going to carry on increasing. And it's not just Brexit, of course. There are global problems with food supply. Not everywhere is recovering from the pandemic as we are in Europe. So there have been issues. Climate change has taken its toll. Severe flooding in the mid and north of Europe, raging fires in the south. That's affecting food supplies. But we're not producing as much food as normal. And it's not because of flooding. It's not because of fire, but because we don't have the workers. So on top of the food price increases that would be coming anyway, that will be coming to France and will be coming to Ireland and be coming to Belgium, we have the extra increases coming as a result of a combination of scarcity driving up prices and the higher costs of getting the food to our shopping baskets. In addition, in other countries, you would expect a food emergency like this to be accompanied by a government response in the form of a national strategy. This is not occurring in Britain. The government think it's the responsibility of businesses to sort it out themselves. So, okay, that's what happens. Tesco sorts it out in their best interest. We'll pay higher wages then. But then you've lost them from somewhere else. There needs to be a national strategy. So there is no national coordination. So businesses are just setting themselves against each other, poaching each other's staff in a way that does nothing for the overall country. It's like having two fruit bowls. You want these fruit bowls to be full. This one's empty. So you just move the fruit from the full bowl to the empty bowl. Right, I've solved your problem. But now this one is empty. So you solve it by moving the fruit from one bowl to the other. Which doesn't actually really solve the core problem. Still not getting us two full bowls of fruit, is it? You ask the government what we should do about a reliance on food imports. And you have some people say, well, we should grow more in Britain. We don't have the staff to harvest what we already grow. How is growing even more going to help? Asked about staff shortages, invest in the domestic workforce. They've got no choice but to, tap the domestic workforce. But we've got unfilled vacancies of 15% across sectors in the supply chain, give or take a few percent. So what's going to happen with food supplies? Will the costs increase to the point where British produce can't compete with EU imports? Will the checks on EU goods in October, if they come in, do they drive up the prices of EU goods as well? And that means that food in general is out of the reach of millions just about managing. This is to say nothing of those who can't already manage. Is there going to come a point where the levels of food poverty become politically unsustainable for the government? What then? What will they do when there is no solution that fits with their Brexit mindset? And how many people have to suffer while we fanny about doing nothing about a serious problem? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.